Each year, more companies go global as products and services cross lines of country, culture, and language. Communicating in this global marketplace can be challenging. Take this food court, for example. Let's assume it's the multinational company where you work. There are representatives from countries around the world here in one place. But like ordering food in this mall, your communication challenge within the four walls of your local office is relatively simple. There are key issues you need to consider, but for the most part, language is not one of them. Like here, where I can order Mexican or Chinese food in plain English, you can usually communicate in one language, English, within the confines of your office. But when reaching out to employees or customers around the world, the issues you face become more complicated, more sensitive, and more challenging. And if done right, they can be more rewarding. So your challenge is, how do you communicate across language, cultural, time, and technology barriers? Welcome to the challenges of the global workplace. Whether you're planning a communication that goes around the office or around the world, you know the four basic tasks you have to start with. First, identifying your audience. Second, defining your message. Third, defining your goals. And fourth, identifying your communication tools. Once you've worked through these tasks, it's time to put your plan into motion. Not too difficult if your business is confined to one building. But what if your company has several locations? You have to consider communicating across several buildings, maybe several states, and maybe several time zones. Now look at this from the perspective of a communicator in the global workplace. You have additional challenges and considerations. You need to consider issues like differences in time zones, even differences in days of the week, different language requirements, and different cultural issues. Language is what allows people to communicate, but at times language can be a barrier to effective communications. Let's just take a simple example where you need to deliver a communication to employees in the US, Canada, and France. Your first inclination may be that you can send English language version to the US and Canada and a French language version to your employees in France. A common assumption. But upon closer examination and counsel from your legal department, you find out that communications in Quebec, Canada must by law be in both English and French. Lesson number 1. Research the legal requirements when communicating in other countries. Upon further research, you learn that French spoken and written in Quebec is not the same as in France. So now you have another set of challenges on your hands. Even though you're communicating in 2 languages, you have to have 3 sets of materials. One English version for US and English-speaking Canadian employees, one version in English and Canadian French for Quebec employees, and one French version for employees in France. So your one communication effort has become a 3-headed monster. One challenge is, how do you ensure your communication is properly translated in the local language and dialect? This is especially important if you don't speak the language or have a trusted contact in that country. As the communicator, you are responsible for the content of what you write, no matter what the language it's in. Take Spanish, for example. There are many different dialects, like there are food types in this food court to consider. 3 major Spanish dialects in the US alone. In the Southwest, Mexican Spanish. In the Northeast, Puerto Rican Spanish. In the South, Cuban Spanish. The differences are slight, but can be important, as words spelled the same way can have different meanings. Now imagine going global and the differences you have to account for. It can be very tricky. Beyond language, there are cultural differences to consider. As a business communicator, the written word is one aspect of communication. Another is the design of the piece, as graphics can help communicate your message. But different images and different colors can have widely different meanings. For example, pink is not a color to be used in China. Put certain Spanish words in red, and you entirely change the meaning of the word. The same can be true about words themselves. As a business communicator, you may work in the marketing department or may be responsible for coming up with product names. As discussed above, you need to consider language and cultural issues very carefully. For example, in the 1960s and 70s, General Motors had a hot-selling car in the US, the Chevy Nova. But no matter what the company did, sales in Latin and South America were terrible. One reason was the translation of Nova in Spanish. Nova means does not go. Well, that's not an effective pitch for a sporty little car. Lesson number 2. The use of certain English words and expressions do not always have the same meaning or even any meaning at all when translated in a different language or seen through the eyes of a different culture. Many expressions or idioms are based in the history and culture of their country of origin. As such, a letter-to-letter or word-to-word translation does not convey the same meaning. Take Pepsi's marketing slogan of the late 1990s, "Come alive with the Pepsi generation." When directly translated into Chinese, its meaning changed to tell potential customers in China, "Pepsi brings your ancestors back from the grave." Well, it may be an eye-catcher, but hardly truthful and hardly attractive to the young, cool audience Pepsi was trying to reach. Another successful ad campaign spoke to the benefits of this product. Got milk? This campaign boasted sales of milk in the U.S. so significantly, it was decided to expand the campaign to nearby countries, including Mexico. But the company responsible for translating the spots into Spanish didn't quite get it. The result was a commercial that asked not, "Got milk?" but rather, "Are you lactating?" But as I mentioned before, words alone may not be an issue. Colors, images, and packaging can be different from culture to culture. When Gerber started selling baby food in Africa, they decided to use the same packaging as years of design, testing, and refinement proved so successful in the United States. That packaging featured a picture of a cute baby on the label. But in Africa, especially outside of the main urban areas, use of Gerber baby food was near zero. The reason? Well, it was later learned by Gerber's marketing group that in Africa, where many people can't read, in-the-know companies routinely put pictures of what's inside the jar, can, or package on the outside. So you may think that a picture of a smiling baby may sell baby food, but not in Africa. So from these few examples, you can see the importance of 2 things. 1, translation, not just of letters and words, but of meaning. And 2, cultural tradition or practices. Another critical issue the global communicator faces is the issue of time. What if your communication needs to be released at the start of business on Monday? Release of your message at 9 a.m. on Monday in New York City means that it's already 2 p.m. in London and it's 10 p.m. in Japan, and the business and stock markets there have already closed. Is this acceptable? It depends on the situation and the communication. But in any event, it's something you must plan for. And if planning the release of communication across time zones, what challenges do you face when trying to hold conference calls or video meetings with affiliates and employees around the world? Depending on what countries your company operates in, someone might have to stay up very late or get up very early to participate in such live meetings. Another important planning consideration. Speaking of time, my time is up. Technology has made the world a smaller place. As a business communicator, you can get in touch with people halfway around the world, over the phone or over the web in a matter of seconds. But time plays a critical role in your global communication efforts. The time it takes to develop and prepare your communication, the time it takes to translate your communication, the timing of the delivery of your communication. Yes, time and timing are important considerations, but language and culture are even more important. As time goes on, each country is becoming more multicultural within its own borders. So whether you're a global communicator or not, the issues covered here today, language, culture, and time, should be part of your strategic and tactile communication plans. Thank you.